Welcome everyone to The Huddle, our first ever episode of The Huddle, our new show here from Blue Bombers headquarters. I'm Ed Tate, your host from BlueBombers.com, joined by the lovely and talented Derek Taylor, the voice of the Bombers on CJOB. We're going to cut up everything today on the first day of free agency, but we'll start...
Here's that $20 for saying that again.
Perfect,
Thanks, buddy.
Perfect. We're going to just give you a little bit of a heads up about this show. When the season starts, when training camp starts, it'll go every Tuesday live at 3 p.m. on our YouTube channel. We'll be periodic here through the spring. We're going to try to do a show from the CFL Combine, which is in Winnipeg in March. We'll try to do a draft preview show. But when training camp starts, Tuesday, 3 p.m. live on our YouTube channel every week. Don't miss it. We're going to give away prizes every week, including this week. We've got a couple of jerseys that we'll give to fans on our YouTube channel right now. Excuse me. And so let's get right to it first of all. Derek, this is like Christmas Day in a lot of ways for CFL fans, for me too, because there's so much change. And it's a little bit less because the prevalence of the one-year contract has disappeared. Teams are making longer commitments to players, and teams are more willing to kind of invest longer than the one-year contract we saw in the past. But a busy day already. We can start rattling off some
spots,
names.
right? Like,
yeah, in
some
spots.
teams are very active, and some teams are very
quiet, including this one. We'll get to what the Bombers are going to do in another segment here too. But let's just start by in the moment, what's kind of jumping out. And one of the things that I saw right away that's interesting, because it's sort of CFL related, but is not, is Matthew Betts has left the CFL for the Detroit Lions of the NFL. Did that one surprise you?
It really did. He signed a free agent deal with the Detroit Lions, and Farhan Lalji at TSN had reported it a couple days ago that it was an option, and I thought, well, that's an interesting pressure tactic, but why would the Detroit Lions want a 29-year-old, soon-to-be 29-year-old defensive end? Betts was phenomenal last year rushing the passer, right? 18 sacks officially. He, of course, had that big game here in Winnipeg where he was blowing kisses to his family, he said, not to the crowd here. I just didn't think the NFL was looking for 29-year-old pass rushers. Honestly, I thought CFL teams are absolutely, bring it on, let's go. Yep. But that one's a real surprise to me. So it takes one of the top 5 overall free agents, certainly one of the top 2 remaining free agents, out of the market for the time being. It may add a little twist later in the season, right? Oh, Matthew Betts has been released by the Detroit Lions and can come back to somebody for half a season salary, but it certainly changes. What is Montreal going to do? Hamilton also was connected to Betts. It was stunned. 29-year-olds old in the NFL world, so congrats to Matthew for that.
We expected the Bombers to be quiet, and so far they have been on the first day, official day of free agency, because of the negotiating window last week. And so some things have become official already. Jamarcus Hardrick has left for Saskatchewan Roughriders. Demira Houston has left for the Calgary Stampeders. We thought Ricky Walker was going to leave for the Calgary Stampeders, but apparently that deal's gone sideways for whatever reason. Dakota Prukop has gone to BC. Kerfala Exume has gone to Toronto. And then there's some guys that are still out there that are in limbo right now. We'll get to that in a little bit. There's a lot of movement that becomes official, but is anything jumping out to you besides the Betts move from around the league?
There's that Tim White is still taken. Tim White's an interesting story, not to get too far into it, but apparently he says he's not moving far off his price of $300,000, and it doesn't appear teams are moving too close to his price of $300,000. Saskatchewan is the mover, right? Calgary's making some moves. You mentioned Demario Houston. Montreal's making some lesser moves, but Saskatchewan is the team that's kind of rocking day one of free agency. A.J. Ouellette's deal is done to be their running back. Jameer Thurman as their new, presumably, I'm assuming he takes over the middle linebacker spot. I'm just going to call it up here. They've got a deal for Adam O'Clair. That one not quite done. Both Herdman Reeds, Winnipeg's finest, have signed there. Jalen Edwards-Cooper to be a new cornerback, perhaps in place of Nick Marshall on that short side. That deal is done. Malik Carney, defensive end, touchdown scorer against the Bombers, moving into SAS. So Saskatchewan actually able to make bodies come or entice bodies to come in free agency, what with all the changes. They are the big mover. kind of all this negotiation term, and certainly here on day number one.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because the negotiating window, or some people call it the legal tampering period, which just doesn't sound right to me. I like negotiating window, has changed things because the first day of free agency, when 11 o'clock hit, all the news spilled forward, and everybody would say, well, how did they already sign a guy 1 minute after the market's open?
Yeah.
So it's kind of made it more legit, I think, but it also kind of takes some of the sizzle out of the steak a little bit because there's a lot of rumors leading up to the market officially opening today.
Yeah, but you get to control the media narrative for 11 days.
Right.
Right? We've been talking about these moves for 11. We've known about the DeMario Houston 2-year deal in Calgary for quite some time, and we've had time to, you and I, discuss it on our radio shows on CJOB and Calgary. Talk to Calgary. Hey, what are we getting in DeMario Houston? It allows them to have 2 weeks of owning the conversation, and sure, it steals a little bit from this day, but it also steals away the questions of, well, how did Edmonton sign Alex Bazzi at 11:02 a.m. when the window just opened?
Yes.
You can't fax fast enough to get there, right? So it took something that was blatantly obviously happening and just brought it out into the open. And honestly, for players, you know me, I'm a big guy with get your money. Get your money because your career is short. Go out and explore your options, and you have time to consider all of your options. Dalton Schoen had time to consider everything that was put in front of him. Brady Oliveira had time to consider multiple offers, some which reportedly were enormous. That's, if I was 26 years old and had my whole future in front of me, I would not want to make a decision quickly because I think as Bomber fans, we would not have wanted Brady to go, oh, $750,000, I'm going there, and leave Bombers, right? So I love it. I think it's great.
Well, let's dive a little bit deeper now into what the Bombers have done because, again, when the market opens, everybody's so excited to see, oh, what changes are going to happen to the club, and it's been silent. The only thing that's become official today was Jesse Briggs announced his retirement. Yesterday, the club announced that Shane Gauthier was coming back, but the heavy lifting for this team has been done since the end of last year, and so you start rattling off the names that are already back. Willie Jefferson, Brady and Dalton, who you mentioned, Brandon Alexander signed last week, Dietrich Nichols, Stanley Bryant, Drew Wolotarski, Jake Thomas, Pat Neufeld, Reddick Cramdy, starting center Chris Kolinkowski. The Hallett brothers are back. Brian Cole, a really valuable linebacker. Johnny Augustine, Tanner Cadwallader. So like a lot of
back,
a lot of the
25.
a lot of work has already been done. And that's the big picture that has to be examined here when it comes to this team in particular.
Yeah, if you're a fan of free agency and you're a fan of a team that's having great results, you just know that vultures are going to come and pick at you.
Absolutely.
Right? And the other part of it is guys who shone for you deserve bigger salaries, and they're going to get them in free agency. And that's something that's going to be on the Bombers for some time. Okay, DeMario Houston had 7 interceptions. Well, he's going to get a 2-year deal for $275 from Calgary. Those are the things that are going to happen. So you get used to seeing guys leave, but you just, as an organization, I guess you have to go, okay, who do we absolutely positively need to stay? We had, if you're the Bombers, we had Zach under contract. We had Kenny Lawler for the year. We had Nick Dembski already for the year. Okay, well, let's start adding dudes back in. And it's not sexy going to market, get Kenny Lawler back from Edmonton like it was in advance of last year, but it's, hey, well, Kenny's still here, and Dalton is still here, and Brady is still here. So it's a different free agency here, and I mean, the other team, with the only team with a better record in 2023 was the Toronto Argos, and they have been picked to the bones.
That's a good point.
Oh, man, they are getting just crushed, lose their defensive coordinator, and everybody's getting out of town because, they won 16 games. They were a top-tier defense, forcing turnovers. Come on down to name your city, and we'll give you big money. So it's
me, the big different. The big picture for the Bombers is important. You'd have to take a step back because when that free agent list came out late November, early December last year, it's like, holy moly, look at all the names on that list. And the work that they've got done, 11 starters from my count are back, and that's massive for a team that's won more games than anybody else in the last 4 years, been to 4 straight Grey Cups. So That's the hard part. Free agency doesn't start on February 1st when the window opens. For this team, it started back in November, even before that when you're locking up guys and talking to them in October, November about extensions.
It's different for good teams and bad teams, right?
Yep.
For Saskatchewan, it started 11 days ago, and it starts today. Like, you needed to get an infusion of talent, and they're adding in bodies all over the place. The Bombers are 14-4 and 15-3 the year before. They didn't need an infusion of talent. They needed to lock up the talent to make sure they're giving the players they already have enough to convince them to stay.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, look at this. They've done that with multiple guys signed through 2025. Kolinkowski signed through 2025. Okay, there's questions on the offensive line, but not at center and not with Stanley Bryant back for another year and not with the younger guys.
I'm looking at that list of the Bomber returnees, and so it's easy to say Dalton's back and Brady's back, Willie's back. Those are star players. Stanley Bryant, going to the Hall of Fame. Is there anybody else on that list of guys, whether they're a starter or even a role player guy that you think, hey, that's a sneaky good signing?
I mean, the first one that comes to mind, and it's not sneaky good, it's good, Chris Streveler. Right, we got to hear without mentioning the fact that Chris Streveler is back from 4 years in the NFL, and it's not like the Bombers were lacking in a short yardage quarterback last season. I think Dakota Prukop was fantastic, and you saw the things that Buck Pierce would do with him. So you're not replacing a weakness, you're just, to me, kind of emphasizing a strength, because when he was last year in 19, Streveler was the most effective runner for me, period. Like, we expected it. That year, William Stanback was the other big dog in the CFL, and that guy's a running back, and that guy's a running back. Streveler does things in the quarterback run game that make you go, oh, okay. Well, Dakota was awesome with, it's 2nd and 1. I'm going to find 6 yards because I can keep my balance and get us there, and I'm going to plop this one into the end zone if we get within the 5. The Strevolution is a different kind of
It's a real
deal.
good point. Yeah, what kind of wrinkles he brings to this offense. As you said, Dakota Prukop was really good at converting the chains and moving the chains and getting first downs for this team.
And staying in there for some run options with Brady and throwing the ball sometimes,
It'd be very interesting to see how Chris Streveler has evolved as a passer after being in the NFL now, because we know what he can do when he's tucking the ball under. I keep thinking of that Banjo Bowl a couple of years ago where he's just blowing up Rough Riders. That's a highlight clip forever for Bomber fans, right? And
I was
so,
on the other side of that one.
There you go.
It was a very long day. Saskatchewan walks in, hey, we're going to Winnipeg and it's going to be great. And Streveler leads a 100-yard drive down the field, and I was in the other booth going, oh man, that hurts.
Blowing people up. It was just a bulldozer, yeah.
And then 2 drives later, another 100-yard drive, and honestly, calling games for the Riders, we're like, yeah, this game is already over.
So
it was done.
Back to him, it's interesting because, he's been in quarterback rooms now, and he mentioned this when he re-signed and we had our media conference with him. He's been with Aaron Rodgers, he's been with Cliff Kingsbury and Kyler Murray. He's been in a lot of Lamar Jackson in his short stint in Baltimore. He's been in a lot of quarterback rooms. He had to soak up a lot of stuff. I'm sure I'm really intrigued as to his evolution as a passer, because he's not coming back here just to be the short yardage guy. I think he's trying to reestablish himself as, look, I can be more than just a get you through the game quarterback if Zach, God forbid, happens to go down. I can be a guy that leads this team to wins. And so he's a real,
need,
and
right?
that's a really, really interesting signing. You mentioned Kolinkowski, Pat Neufeld, Stanley Bryant. That's 3/5 of the offensive line back. And
2 holes still there, right?
2 holes still there. Jeff Gray has gone to market. He hasn't been re-signed. Jamarcus Hardrick has signed with Saskatchewan. They really like Liam Dobson and Tui Eli in this building as guys that could fill in for Jeff Gray at the guard spot. We should move on here now and talk about what the Bombers have lost, because the Hardrick thing is a huge hole. I think they do have faith in Dobson and Tui to take over that left guard spot and give them depth there. Both guys have played a lot of games. The right tackle spot's a real mystery for this team right now, isn't it?
The right tackle spot's a real mystery for much of the CFL.
Good point.
And that's one of the things. There's 18 starting tackle spots in the Canadian Football League. And if I think about last year, I think there were maybe 5 very good to great tackles in the entire league. So 13 that were like, oh, okay, well, Hope we get out of this game alive.
Right.
Hope he doesn't get turnstiled by the Willie Jeffersons and Jackson Jeffcoats
Yep.
of the world. So to lose one is, and to me, it's an enormous deal. And the Bombers now, you look at, they brought back Chris Ivey. Okay, well, it's a guy they're familiar with, but do we have any idea what Chris Ivey will be at the CFL level? And the answer for me is absolutely not, because I haven't seen him play in a game. Drew Richmond was a left-sided player, decided to retire as opposed to coming back and playing more with the Bombers. So, you know me, I'm big on pay offensive linemen big money. Get offensive linemen, because I just feel like offensive linemen, after quarterback, the 5-man offensive lineman unit is probably my favorite unit, just because of what it does for you in the run game and keeps. Kolaris got to be a difficult quarterback to block for, right? Because he can scramble, all of a sudden he's over here, and make sure you don't hold,
Yep.
right? So now Jamarcus Hardrick, who for me has been the best right tackle in the game, maybe apart from the one Chris Van Zyl year in 2019, that's enormous. And you now go to a journeyman or a rookie.
Yep.
That's a spot of concern, both in the pass game and the run game now.
You know, we're going to miss Hardrick around here because he has great copy, great sound bites, great for the fans.
Happy to be at work.
And happy to be at work. And so we wish him well in Saskatchewan. He had a really nice farewell to Winnipeg on his social media accounts. If you have a chance, you should check that out. But, you know, nobody begrudges him. You mentioned this earlier. He's, I think he's the highest paid American offensive lineman in the league right now. And so go get it. Yes, absolutely. He's got a family to feed. This, again, part of the price of being dominant for so long, that O-line being so steady, is that people come and poach your best players, and that's one of them.
And it was probably, I mean, as I kind of look at it from outside, I think it's probably a tough decision the Bombers had to make. But for so many years, people would ask me, well, why are the Bombers successful year after year? And to me, it's because they got guys to take less money than they could have got elsewhere. It was 2021. I was on radio saying, you know what? I would take Jackson Jeffcoat and I would make him the highest paid defensive player in the CFL just to get him away from Winnipeg. If I was Edmonton, I would just throw a money truck. Please take whatever you want and come kill quarterbacks in Edmonton. And you know, they wouldn't do it. Dalton Schoen could have got more money. Brady Oliveira could have got more money, but what they've found here in Winnipeg is an environment that guys love to play for, and they value other things more than an extra $20,000. And to me, that's where their success has come from. At some point, even though they get Dalton Schoen to take less money than he was apparently offered, still a salary cap, even though it went up $130,000. There's still a cap, and so you can't have everybody. But this is, to me, the first, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, and you can correct me, but the first year where, to me, kind of the cornerstones of this run of Grey Cups, Hardrick, Jeffcoat, are going to get away. I'm trying to think if I've missed anybody, because they made the transition from Steven Richardson to Ricky Walker pretty well.
Casey Sales.
Casey Sales is the one in between there. Now it's
going to be different. It's going to be different. Again, you know, Hardrick got what he deserved from Saskatchewan. You know, one of the narratives that was out there around the time that the Hardrick to Saskatchewan news broke was that now also on top of this, Drew Richmond is retiring. And I can tell you, the club knew that this might have been happening. Since the end of last year, he wasn't sure that he was coming back. But it's funny that he's been in-house for a while. He's only played in parts of 2 games in like 3 years. So this idea that it's a crushing loss that this guy's retired, I find that to be a little bit skewed, because the Bombers don't know what they have in him. Like I mentioned earlier, they know what they have in Liam Dobson and Tui to replace Jeff Gray potentially at guard. I don't think they knew what they had in Drew Richmond, to be honest. You can practice all the time, but until you get under the lights, so to speak, great credentials, but if his heart's not in it, then it's not in it. There's a guy that they signed last week that I wanted to bring up here, and this is where you have to rely on your scouting department. Mika Vanterpool, who played at Hawaii, is a guy that was with New England and then in the USFL with New Jersey. this is interesting stat. And I mean, everybody's got great credentials, right, until you get up here and get in the game. He played both tackle and guard, and in his 5th season at Hawaii, he started 13 games, was a second-team all-conference, did not allow a sack or give up a penalty or take a penalty.
Nice.
So that's the kind of guy that you're going to have to rely on. If you don't get a journeyman, as you mentioned, that's out there maybe on the market to replace Jamarcus Hardrick, you got to rely on Danny McManus and Ted Gavaya and Cyril Penn, the scouting staff, to find another Jamarcus Hardrick, another Stanley Bryant. Now, that's a big question mark, but you can bet that there'll be, probably a handful of tackle candidates in training camp.
And the one thing I kind of count on is Zach Collaros is the best quarterback in the CFL. I kind of think that since I started tracking in 2015, at keeping pressure from turning into sacks. So if there is more quarterback pressure, okay, but Zach's only going to get sacked 15% of the time on those, or 18% of the time, some very low number. So you can work around that to an extent. And yes, you may be saying, well, there were games where James Vaughters really gave it to Jamarcus Hardrick in that Calgary. Yeah, that stuff happens. And maybe it didn't happen. I can think of years where the CFL had tackles. Stanley Bryant and Derek Dennis and Sir Vincent Rogers were going, and these guys would allow 1 sack in an entire season,
right,
and take 1 penalty and allow 9 quarterback pressures in 18 games, right? But we're in kind of a weird spot with offensive linemen, in that there just aren't a lot of great tackles that are here, and whatever. There's too many reasons to hypothesize why that is, but to lose one to me is a blow. But I mean, to go the opposite side and to lose Jackson Jeffcoat.
Well, let's get
was
to
a
that.
blow too.
Yeah, so I think last week after the announcement that Dalton Schoen and Brady were coming back, you start to wonder about the amount of money that's out there. And we had heard that Jackson Jeffcoat was going to go to market. And then Paul Friesen from the Sun, to his credit, had the story with Jackson that he's decided to retire. That's a tough one too. There's another fan favorite that had been so important, especially in those Grey Cup games, man, the 2019 and 2021. He was one of the best players on the field in both those games. So that one stings a little bit too. And I mean, we're probably the biggest, the president of the Jackson Jeffcoat fan club. Talk to us about the impact of his decision to retire, and not just how it affects Winnipeg, but somebody in this league could have had a real good defensive end.
Yeah, so for years it was Jackson and Willie, right? And Willie gets more attention. Willie's more outgoing. Willie's the real showman, right? Strumming on the old banjo. Willie's just, they're different dudes, and they both kill offenses in different ways. But just from charting it out, no defensive end in the CFL was more effective at getting pressure than Jackson Jeffcoat on a per-game basis. He would be the league leader. If he played 18 games a year, he'd have been the runaway league leader in quarterback pressures. And in just every one of those years, that is so... He's not batting down passes like Willie, and he's not taking that big Euro step, what I call it, inside to beat a tackle and, having a hilarious celebration. But, man, he destroyed offenses. And now you don't have those two. Both those guys were at the top of their game, and now you don't have both of them to work together. Jackson missed 3 games last year, which was his healthiest season in some time. I feel like it would have been 2 if not for that late season one where the Bombers wanted to rest people. But he'd played 12 games in each of the 4 years prior. The shortened season, that means he only missed 2, but there's seasons where he missed 6 games. And people start to wonder, is he healthy? Can he be healthy? How long can we count on him to be healthy? This is the stat.
You asked us to remind you.
This is the stat. If there's any stat and feel free to check me on this because I ran the math a few times and I wanted to make sure. But this is the stat that Bomber fans hope that we will not be pointing to right around week 10 on our pregame show. I went back through the last 3 seasons, so 23, 22, and 21. I want to see. Okay, when Jackson is out, how does Willie do, right? Because they're such a dynamic duo. I found 10 games where Jackson Jeffcoat did not play and Willie Jefferson did play. In those 10 games, no Jackson Jeffcoat, but Willie Jefferson. Willie Jefferson had 0 sacks, not 1. When it was Celestin Haba, if it was LB Mack, if it was Cedric Wilcox the last couple of years, none. it's not all because Jackson's gone, and it's not anything against Willie, but it was just, it's just noticeable.
It's a great stat, and it's also
None.
It's
Zero.
It also shows you that when Jackson's not in the game, more attention to Willie too.
That's very well done.
And that's where things change. When you have, pick your poison at each end, and no, that's no disrespect to Celestin Haba, who I think is a real good prospect and a guy that could make some noise this year as potentially Jackson's replacement. But when you don't have that known commodity at the other end, and you just, another team would say, we got to double up on number 5. We're going to bring a fullback over there. The extra receiver's going to, the receiver's going to chip down on him.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, don't let him beat us because we don't know about this guy over here.
Yeah, and not just another guy, like a guy you are afraid of.
Right.
Like Jackson could easily have been the number 1 defensive end on a bunch of teams, but yeah, 10 games and no sack. Jackson would create more quarterback pressures. Willie would get more sacks. Willie obviously is the world's greatest at pass knockdowns from a CFL perspective. But that is one thing that we're going to get halfway through the season and have to look back at of, have the replacements for Jackson been able to enhance this? And whatever it is, just promise me. I want you to make a promise to me. Don't at the midseason be, if it's not going well for the defensive line, say, oh, I think Willie Jefferson's getting old. Do not. I don't want to have that conversation, and I will not tolerate that on the pregame show.
I'm going to write it down.
No one can say that, because you have taken away the gravitational pull of Jackson Jeffcoat. You mentioned guys, extra blockers and chipping and stuff. The gravitational pull Jackson Jeffcoat, I presume, must have on an opposing offense is substantial.
Well,
what can Celestin Haba do?
Yeah, let's wrap up the Jackson Jeffcoat discussion here, because it's too bad that he's not back here. I mean, I think he's just a victim of the money going elsewhere with this roster. What's disappointing to me is that we're both raving about him and nobody else has really stepped up during the negotiating window. Now that could change. Yep. Someone could come back to him in the next few days, next few hours, and say, hey, let's double back on that number that we were throwing about there. We'll come back to you on this, and then maybe you unretire, But yeah. in the meantime, it's disappointing that a guy with that much skill still is not going to be in this league this year.
Which, this is just hypothesis and taking that information and trying to synthesize something about it, but it just makes me believe that Jackson wanted to do other things if it wasn't playing Winnipeg.
Yep.
If you're from Texas, you know, guys, you'll see guys want to play near the American coast where they live, right? Oh, if I'm a West Coast guy, I'd love to play in Vancouver, or Calgary's an easy flight. If I'm an East Coast guy, hey, maybe Toronto or Hamilton, I can get an easy flight home. Maybe Jackson just said, if it's not in Winnipeg, I don't really want to do it, because it's tough for me to think that teams looked at him playing through / gutting out 15 games last season plus the playoffs and generally tormenting quarterbacks and thought, yeah, we're good.
Yeah.
Because I can look at some of these rosters here, Ed Tate, and say, no, you're not good. You teams, there are multiple teams that could have used Jackson. So it makes me believe that this is more of like, if it's not in Winnipeg, I don't really want to go somewhere else and do it. I've got the next phase of my life ready to go, and it's my decision to
good for him.
Leave. So
I know he's got a real estate career too in Austin, Texas. So
he's a sharp guy.
Yeah, he's very sharp.
When you talk to Jackson, if you've had the good fortune to talk to Jackson, you go, this guy's
right.
He's got things together. He's very. I assume he had it all together when he was like 12.
Right.
Just based on knowing him at 33.
Let's. Some of the other names that are going to market for Winnipeg. I mean, it's obviously a concern. Sergio Castillo still hasn't signed, so who would kick for the Bombers right now? That's a bit of a mystery. Janarian Grant's another name that jumps out. The all-time kick return touchdown leader for this team is out there. Janarian's a little bit different in that I went back and looked. He signed just before free agency last year, and then the year before that, he didn't sign till April. So I'm not sure if he goes away on a vacation right around the time of free agency and doesn't turn his phone on or what. But there's a guy that I'm sure those two guys, Castillo and Grant, are names that jump out to me on the guys that are in limbo right now. Rashid Bailey too, a guy that does all kinds of dirty work. Maybe give us your thoughts on those three guys in particular, Bailey, Castillo, and Janarian.
I think start with Janarian Grant. There are 5 teams that could claim we have the best returner in the CFL, and the Bombers would absolutely be one of them. Like Janarian Grant, and to be able to do kickoffs and punts and do them effectively is, and I mean that return against Sass last year was
Unbelievable.
Oh.
Play of the year.
the play of the absolutely, and we knew it in week 2 or
Yeah.
whatever it was. It was like this play of the year. It's done. It's over. It doesn't even matter. Janarian is an absolute threat, and you saw how much they missed that when he was out injured because Greg McCrae, okay, would always double catch the ball. Jamal Parker maybe a little better, but neither guy. I think maybe they had one return that was as long as Janarian's career average.
Right.
So their best return was what Janarian averaged. I'd have to double check that stat, but it's in that vein. So that he's an important piece because I don't know where he's at, but if I was him, I would look at Javon Leake, who for punt return touchdowns, 11th in kickoff returns, got a big deal to move to Edmonton. You know? Well, maybe I deserve a little more.
Yeah.
Sergio Castillo.
90% make rate last year, set a club record.
Yeah, and just from a calming the nerves of Bomber fans perspective,
Absolutely.
was 100th percentile.
Yep.
Right? So, yeah, Sergio Castillo, valuable, good kicker, good on kickoffs, very valuable. Rashid Bailey. I mean,
Heart and soul guy, right?
well, and that's the thing. There are so many of those. When you're around the Bombers team, there are so many guys that you look at and go, oh, that guy is one of these heart and soul guys, and they're already losing one in Jamarcus Hardrick. Bailey then provides surplus value. Bailey also took less money to come back last year, and by reports, a significantly reduced salary to come back last year. So that's one. Malik Clements was valuable. They expect Brian Cole to fill that role. I guess we'll see what happens. Jeff Gray, University of Manitoba's finest, has been a starter for some time. They've got a global player, but in Jamison Sheehan, but Teodric Hansen off the edge.
He was the poster boy for the global program the first few years, yeah.
If he wants to play,
I don't think
you got to bring Teodric Hansen back.
Right, whether he's global, American, or Martian, I think he's on your special teams. He's blowing people up, yeah.
Ricky Walker will be interesting because there are a lot of defensive tackles and at points in their career, elite defensive tackles that are currently on the market, and you just haven't heard much about. Sean Oakman doesn't, in my mind, qualify as elite, but is free. Dylan Wynn, at his peak, absolutely savages opposing offenses. That guy's free. So
Armando Seawall going to the Hall of Fame. Woody Barron, BC, let go. Those are guys too that are on the
tormented
market.
the Bombers last year. Yeah, you look at that and go, okay, well, as you see that, and as we get to the actual free agent day, and you see so many potentially dominant American tackles, or at one time dominant American defensive tackles, I go, okay, well, I'm now less concerned about that spot because maybe you can get somebody for $75,000 less than I thought there would be because they know what they're doing, and we're here chopping it up.
Okay.
But how many? What do we got? Just on this, I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 jobs to be filled for the Bombers in the starting lineup next year, including kicker and returner.
Yeah.
Are you comfortable
in
that moment?
I am, because of Danny McManus and Ted Gavai and Cyril Penn finding players. I mean, they've turned over the secondary so much in the last few years. That's just one area that they've done a good job. They found Dalton Schoen. You know, there's examples of them being able to fill that
Evan
need.
Holm.
Exactly, Evan Holm, Jamal Parker. I mean, Ricky Walker, Casey Sale. All these guys that are some of them are moving on. Demario Houston. But that's just the talent pool has been always replaced very well by this staff. Hey, let's take a break here for a sec, and when we come back, we'll go around the league now and do a deeper dive at what each team has done or not done in free agency. So let's take a quick break, and then we'll be right back.
All right, what is going on, guys? Thank you so much for tuning into this first episode of The Huddle. I'm Josh. This is the producer booth. Welcome on in. We're going to start the second half of the show off by doing a little giveaway here. So we have this Zach Collaros jersey that we're going to give away. So if you are in chat, we're going to be giving this away to someone who is able to come and pick it up in the Bomber store at the ticketing counter. New Bomber store, by the way. So come check that out, and the winner will come and pick up the jersey at the ticketing counter in the Bomber store. So if you're in chat right now and you want to win the Zach Collaros jersey, you have about 60 seconds to type Collaros and send that in the chat. And we're going to pick out a winner from chatters that are joining us live on stream. Thanks for sticking with us so far. It's been an awesome half an hour. A lot of great insights from Ed and Derek coming at you from our new studio here at the Bomber Stadium.
I think we got another jersey to give away at the end of the show too, right?
We do, yeah, that's
Okay,
right. We do have another one.
Right on.
The new Bomber store, by the way. I know you work here, but that was my first time seeing it today.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah,
Yeah.
you got to get in there and check it out. Lots of new merchandise too, by the way. There's the plug for the Bomber store. Wade will be happy with that.
That's
Stradler
a
jersey?
great plug.
Yeah.
That's a great plug.
So let's get back to our first day of free agents discussion here on the first episode ever of the Huddle. Can't thank you enough for joining us, DT, you're a rock star. Let's look around the league now because, again, it's been kind of quiet here in Winnipeg, but a lot of teams are doing a lot of different things. And one of the kind of moves that got lost because it happened, it seems like forever ago, but it didn't really. It was in January. Drew Brown is now with the Ottawa Redblacks. The Bombers traded him. He was going to free agency, got a fifth-round draft pick in return. Ottawa traded for him to have that lead in to try to sign him before he hit the market, and they've locked him up. I think a real good signing for them. Gives them some more stability and some more options at quarterback. They had Dustin Crum last year, beat the Bombers on that game in Ottawa. Jeremiah Mazzoli's coming off another injury, so there's some uncertainty there, but that's a real good pickup for them. What do you like about what Ottawa's done with
Ed,
Brown?
I gotta interrupt you here. You jumped the gun a little bit there. You started talking. I haven't given the jersey away. You're gonna have a lot of upset fans if we keep running the show and I don't give the jersey away.
Okay, do it then. I thought
I thought it was going to be later, huh?
Okay, here we go.
That's a miscommunication from the booth. Then that's on me. But
Let's go, Josh. Give the jersey away.
All right, I will. So welcome back into the booth. Thanks for being here. Thanks for joining us. So in the chat, the winner of the Zach Collaros jersey giveaway is Alec Beatty. AlecBeatty. Alec Beatty is the winner of the Collaros jersey. So if that's you, come down to the Bomber store at the stadium, the ticket counter, and all you have to do is show them that is your YouTube account. Unfortunately, we can't message you privately, but if you come down and show them at the ticket counter that is your YouTube account with your profile picture and all that stuff, we'll be more than happy to get you that jersey. So thank you, everyone, for joining us, and stick around. There's going to be another jersey giveaway in a little bit, and now I'm going to throw it back to Ed Tate down here in the booth.
Like we were saying before, we were so rudely interrupted. Thanks, Josh. You forgot that. My bad. Appreciate it. Alec B will be happy. Is it Alec B?
Alec Beatty.
Okay,
That's right.
on.
That's right. Alec Beatty.
So Drew Brown.
Drew
to
Brown.
Ottawa.
Let's go. Yeah. What they've done.
Just the first part of this, there was no way the Bombers could possibly have kept Drew Brown. And if they did, I would have yelled and screamed. Because Drew has very clearly shown that he's the next guy in the Canadian Football League. Is he the next star? Who knows? But
he needs to play.
He's the next guy who deserves a starting opportunity in the Canadian Football League. And if you wanted to keep him with the Bombers, you either had to get rid of Zach Collaros, or you had to pay a backup quarterback $350,000 if he was going to take that contract. You can't. To me, there was zero chance, and it's sad. But it's a 2-year deal. Maybe he's back in 2026. Just saying. Ottawa, as a team that has been on the verge for 3 seasons now. This will be the 3rd season. And their problem to me has just been they can't keep their quarterback healthy. They were going to get they had Nick Arbuckle last year. Nick did not work. So Jeremiah Mazzoli's come back from injury, immediately gets hurt. Tyree Adams comes in, looks real nice in that first game, tears his ACL. Lord, why have you cursed me like this, say Red Blacks fans?
Yeah.
Dustin Crum comes in,
fourth stringer, essentially.
Right, and how many teams, when you get to your fourth quarterback, you probably figure you're done, or just pray that it's somehow Tracy Ham again, because who knows. So Crum led some intriguing games, and obviously the game against the Bombers last season where they were down 14 with 2:38 to go, and they ended up winning in overtime. Crum did some stuff, but as the year went along, he went, okay, this is about the scrambling, and the rest of it isn't there. So they needed to be solidified at quarterback. And when you look at Drew Brown, Jeremiah Masoli, Tyree Adams, Dustin Crum, Piggy T as well, you go, okay, well, Brown's going to get the first shot. Jeremiah Masoli is probably the best number 2 option in the Canadian Football League. He's a guy who has a very high ceiling to me and a very low floor as well, but can make some stuff happen. So you go, okay, at the start, that's a nice place to go with. Solid in the Canadian interior offensive line, Desjardins, honestly, whoever they'll run at center, and Darius Bladek, who they get from Toronto. You go, okay, that's good. Tackles have been a problem for them for some time. We talked earlier about there aren't a lot of good tackles. I don't know of the tackles they have, and I'm not a big Dino Boyd guy, and Dante Bull did not look like the first overall pick last year. So they'll work on that. Their receiving core got a real shot in the arm by getting Dominic Rhymes back. So Drew Brown gets to work with Dominic Rhymes, Braylon Addison to the one side, Justin Hardy, who popped last year, Jalen Ackland, who popped 3 years ago, and then a Canadian. Okay, well, this offense, you can put whoever you want at running back. They choose to bring back Devontae Williams on a 2-year deal. You go, this team's ready to rock and roll.
Yeah, he's a 1,000-yard back. He was in Winnipeg before he went to Ottawa, so that I don't mind him as a back.
If they're to me, their biggest problem by far has been health. A year ago, I would have been raving, and I certainly was raving about the moves that Sean Burke made in free agency, because you looked at, well, Money Hunter and Carriel Brooks as the cornerback halfback duo to that one side. Just drool started coming down my cheeks, right? Money Hunter had some injury problems, but he is back. So I look at Money Hunter, Damon Webb, whoever they throw at safety, probably Justin Howell. Brandon Dandridge is back. They get Adarius Pickett from Toronto.
That's a big pickup to me.
That guy was a monster. Javon Santos-Knox is a playmaker in the middle, and Frankie Griffin runs 100 miles an hour as your 2 linebackers. Lorenzo Malden was Defensive Player of the Year 2 years ago. Bryce Carter, fine.
I really like Carter too. He's come on as a defensive end. Last year he had a really good year. So it looks promising. But it had to look promising because it's been a disaster there for a while. I mean, I know they had their issues, but the fans in Ottawa deserve a winner again, and it's been a tough road with injuries. And a lot of people in Winnipeg are Bobby Dice fans and hope that he can get that thing turned around. But I like what they've done here through the first part of February. So
they're good, as long as their quarterbacks, as long as Drew Brown stays healthy. Well, honestly, they're rolling the dice a bit on Drew Brown, but they're rolling the dice at a reasonable price with a guy who you saw it here, you heard him when he was playing here, like that week 1 game in 2022 against Ottawa, Zach Collaros gets pulled out by the injury spotter. Drew this is a game-winning drive they need to have complete on first down. They try to heat him up with a blitz on second down, so he jumps up and throws it over the line of scrimmage, and I thought, well, this guy's very comfortable. The start in BC with the backups that year didn't go great, the 2 pick sixes.
He still threw for 300 in that game with a bunch of backups.
But this year, down 22-0 to Edmonton, leads the charge back. Maybe it was always coming, but Drew threw. Kenny Lawler was the greatest catch of the Bombers this year. And the one-hander in the back of the end zone, Drew threw that one. Cold night in Calgary. Zach's injured with the neck injury from Edmonton. Leads it over a pretty stiff, that was defense and DeMario Houston, but Drew was the quarterback of that game, and you went, okay, that's a Calgary defense that goofs with a lot of quarterbacks. Drew got that one done. Late season start, Drew gets that one done. He's shown that he deserves this next opportunity, and he goes with an offensive coordinator that Zach Collaros has a ton of respect for in Tommy Condell.
Yeah, great point.
And that, if Zach and Drew know quarterbacking in the CFL better than I do, and if Zach thinks it's a good idea and Drew believes in Zach as they very clearly do, Drew is then primed for, he has a chance to be a really good quarterback at this league, and now he gets to find out if that's his future.
So we came up with this really sophisticated grading system here for free agency, and we're asking you to do the thumbs up, thumbs down, or meh on each team here. So Ottawa's first up, thumbs down, or meh.
Ottawa with Drew Brown, Dominic Rhymes,
I think we've already answered the question.
Darius Bladek, and then
Darius Pickett. Did you say Pickett?
Darius Pickett. Yeah, I have that unfortunately in a wrong font on my depth chart. Yeah, that's a thumbs up for the Ottawa Redblacks.
Okay, cool.
Did I do that right? Is it?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay,
Yeah.
just making sure because it's very complex.
Just like Gladiator, right? Thumbs up.
and
thumbs
some
down.
nice re-signings of their own guys, right? We talked about Hunter, Webb, and Dandridge. Those are three pieces.
Yeah, Braylon Addison.
In the back six.
Yeah.
Braylon Addison
Williams.
is a multiple weapon in this league when he's healthy.
Okay.
The things you see Nick Dembski do, Braylon Addison can do some of those things as well if an offensive coordinator wants to, and it's his old offensive coordinator from Hamilton, so love it.
Let's talk about Hamilton since you just brought it up. I guess the biggest news in Hamilton this offseason is Scott Milanovich and his new staff taking over, and they're going to put their imprint on the Ticats, a team that was coming off a disappointing season. You know, they made the big commitment to Bo Levi Mitchell. They had the Grey Cup in their city last year, and you know, so there's been a lot of change. Let's kind of dive into the Ticats a little bit here. What do you like about what they've done or not done so far?
Yeah, the biggest thing, it's not free. The biggest non-free agent is they've committed to Bo Levi Mitchell for 2024. Shrug face because he hasn't been Bo since 2018.
Yeah.
Jamal Peters at the boundary corner. They got used to Delvin Breaux being a huge body at that boundary corner spot. They're going to love Jamal Peters there. Dwayne Hendricks, they get him to come down the road from Toronto. You can't swing do you swing dead cats, is that the saying, without hitting a CFL person who loves Dwayne Hendricks and thinks he is the next interior offensive monster if he's not already there. Brandon Barlow was a depth player in Toronto. They bring him in. So if you add Peters and Hendricks, I think for the Hamilton Tiger Cats, okay, you're doing some good stuff. They went and locked down their offensive line. Brandon Revenberg through 25. Jordan Murray, the right tackle. I presume right tackle through 25 if Figueroa's back. They really made a push for Brady Oliveira, which comes to my point about Hamilton. I don't know what they're doing, and I don't understand the things that they do. They paid top of market for James Butler last year to get the exact same production they had from their American running backs the year before. Granted, Butler took 90+% of their carries, but the running game was exactly the same. And oh, by the way, they didn't really care too much about the running game. And then they try to make the move for Brady. All the while, their starting receivers are Terry Godwin, somebody, Keandre Smith, Omar Bayless, and Tyler Ternowski.
And we talked earlier about Tim White still being out there. That's their best receiver, maybe their best player that's gone to market right now, and no bites on him yet.
They'll lose Jameer Thurman from that linebacking core, try to replace him with Jordan Williams.
Right, Tyreek McAllister, their returner's gone to the Raiders, I believe, in the NFL, right?
Yep,
so there's another guy that's...
They brought back Richard Leonard. I'll have to update that, but they have had a lot of losses on that team, and I don't...
Sometimes not surprising when you have a new staff that comes in, though, right? They want to move on or bring their own people in, and we'll see what Scott Milanovich, because it's a way different coaching staff too. So
they look like they'll be able to cover. I like this back six just fine with Peters, Javian Elliott, Stavros Katsantonis got a chance to jump and got them to get rid of Tunde Adeleke, Dexter Lawson, maybe Richard Leonard, and Carthel Flowers Lloyd was a special teams dynamo that probably gets a chance to fit in there somewhere. Yep. Okay, shout out to Winnipeg's Mason Bennett. Maybe gets a step up at defensive end with Malik Carney moving on. Casey Sales redoes his deal through 2025. There are pieces of this Hamilton team, but once you commit to Bo for another year at quarterback and you keep trying to pay super high market rates for running backs, I become less convinced that.
Okay, so
I think you know what you're doing.
So let's have the grade: thumbs up, thumbs down, or eh.
Now I don't want to seem petty because the Ticats dared to try and face the Bombers and twice in the Grey Cup, and I'm in the Bombers' office. But this is
okay.
I just don't. Mark Leggio. Mark Leggio was David Cote had a bad season. And Mark Leggio, I like Mark so much. But his kicking at the CFL level is not kicking at the CFL level. And they bring him back and they go, okay. I
We'll see.
Hamilton
Again,
makes me.
It's a long way to training camp,
It really
right?
is.
We
It's-
have to be careful because it's we can, we give out grades for fun here, but it's February. We'll see what the grades look like when it really matters. But I'm
Yeah.
it's a bit of a mystery right now, and there's still some time for them to do a lot of stuff here. There's still names on the free agent market that's what's going to be interesting even with Winnipeg here is as this initial surge kind of settles down, is there somebody that they'll again circle back on in a week or 2-3 days and maybe bring in? So
Simone Lawrence is free for
that's
them.
another one. Yep.
Chris Van Zyle's probably at the end. Darrell
Yep.
Walker, Tim White.
Yeah.
And
That's
Dylan,
the one. If they get him back, that's a major save for them.
I wonder less about the receiving core if a dynamic weapon like Tim White is in there.
Okay, let's look at Toronto. No.
Speaking of Toronto, Theodric Hansen is signed with.
Oh, there you go.
What? T. Hansen. Okay, the Argos needed to do some. That's that one. That one stings a bit. He fights back from his Achilles injury last season, and he's an athlete.
Well, you mentioned
He
it.
is
So
an
that's
athlete.
Again, it's
Sorry,
tough.
for those that didn't hear, I was off camera. Who are we talking
Oh,
about?
I'm sorry.
Theodric Hansen. Breaking news from Sam. Theodric Hansen is signed with the Toronto Argonauts. So, I mean, people fell in love with him here, especially for what he did in that 2019 Grey Cup, where he blew up a couple of Ticats on that one kickoff cover. That's a different one. It's too bad. But as you mentioned earlier, the Bombers have their global player in Jamison Sheehan, the punter, and
You do need two, though, right? Because roster rules the way they are, you need one global, but if you use a second global player, you get an extra game day roster spot. So everybody would
Yeah.
like to have two. You could still...
Les Maruo is a free agent, though.
yeah. So there'll be Jamison Sheehan. Les can come back. Suleiman Karamoko
defensive
is
back.
under contract, I believe, for another year. So
And then there's a global draft coming up too, so we'll see what happens there. But that's too bad to see Theodric go again.
special teams beast
Yeah.
and rotational defensive end was very. I think the rotation. Working with Doug Brown, right? You get a lot of great insights. And my partner before, Luke Mullender, was a defensive lineman. And just having those rotational guys is so important on the defensive end spots. Forgive me, with the Bombers in 21, went to the NFL.
Kongbo,
Thank
yeah.
you, was a monster in that Jeffcoat, Jefferson, Kongbo trio. So yeah, losing Hansen from that it was kind of a free roster spot. It's a loss. Not the biggest loss
Yep.
in the world, but that stings a little bit. So best of luck to Theodric in Toronto.
Yeah, let's dive into the Argos a little bit more because
Just like
you mentioned this earlier. Good teams get poached, and they were 16-2 last year. Obviously, they were upset in the East Final to Montreal, but man, there's been a lot of exits from the Big Smoke to other places.
hungry lions picking away at the corpse of a
Darius-
gazelle.
Yeah, Darius Pickett to Ottawa, we mentioned. Darius Bladdock, the offensive lineman to Ottawa. Boris Beattie, the kicker to Edmonton. Javon Leake, the kick return specialist to Edmonton.
Jamal Peters to Hamilton.
Peters to Hamilton. AJ Willett to Sask. I'm probably missing some guys here
Well,
too.
Quantez Stiggers is going to the NFL.
Qantas Stickers.
That guy, you saw him in the game here in Winnipeg.
They-
That guy was crazy.
They also signed Kerfalo Exume, which we mentioned earlier.
They get T. Hansen. They get Tunde Adeleke from
That's an
Hamilton.
interesting signing.
If Adeleke's healthy, he's a borderline ratio changer on defense. Exume, they re-sign Tavares Daniels. I like Toronto from the perspective of they really, you know me, we've had this conversation a bunch of times. What matters in the run game to me is the offensive line and the scheme and the play call and the quarterback, and then it becomes a running back. Toronto looks like a team that we're making sure our offensive line is back. We allowed 14 sacks, whatever the ridiculously low number was, as a byproduct of their offense. We didn't allow a lot of sacks. Our quarterback wasn't under pressure a bunch, and we opened holes for running backs. Well, Ryan Hunter signed through 2026. Darius Sirocco at center signed through 2026. Peter Nicastro is back. They've got depth options at Canadian. Dijon Allen was the top offensive lineman in the league. He's back. They lose one of their options at left tackle, but they bring back Isaiah Cage. They went, okay, we're going offensive line, and we're going there hard, and that's great for them. The Jake Serezna trade.
Forgot about that.
Super interesting, right? Jake Serezna acquired by Toronto in exchange for Canadian receiver Curly Gittins, who missed most of last season after
To
a
Edmonton,
breakout 22
yeah,
to
yeah.
the Edmonton Elks. Falarin Arimilade, Jake Serezna. Serezna gets to move back inside full time, I would presume is what their new defensive coordinator will do, and he eats people up there. Falarin Arimilade has got 4 more years to make my prediction of he's going to be Defensive Player of the Year at some point come true. He did not miss a beat last year, moving from Calgary to Toronto. Robbie Smith on the other side, Deontay Knight. They've got Canadian options as well. They'll have to fill in. They got Wynton McManus back, but they're kind of picking away at the 16-2 team because you're losing your 2 corners, right? Peters and presumably Stiggers. At 21, you can't be this good and not be picked in the NFL draft.
Right.
They had some options pop up during the year. Mason Pierce shone in that game here. They didn't bring their full team, but they brought Mason Pierce at halfback. So offensive line love, defensive line love, Wynton McManus love, Tunde Adeleke acquisition love. Let the running back go, fine, you've got options there. Chad Kelly was dynamite, and he's under contract for 3 years. They are still, to me, underwhelming at receiving options. And that, to me, is a problem for them. Tavares Daniels, yes, absolutely. Please, sir, may I have another. DeMonte Coxey, fine.
Yep.
But at the moment, like I look at this and go, they have to find a guy in camp or start 3 Canadians, and their
They
Canadians
have
are
found
not.
receivers in the past, so you got to give them credit. John Murphy and those guys down there have found talent in the past. It's interesting. I still think that you touched on it. They're following sort of the Bomber blueprint of let's be dominant at the line of scrimmage, and then the rest we can find. We'll make sure our Canadians are taken care of on the offensive line. And let's just be dominant on the defensive line too, and they've done that. But man, you look at some of the players that have left, and it's that's what happens when you're 16
3 of their
and
back
2.
6, right? Like Peters, Pickett, and I'm missing. Stiggers is going to
Yep.
be gone.
Yeah.
You're going to lose 3 of your back 6, and that was one of the strengths of your team.
Yeah, we should talk a little bit about Stiggers. It's quite the story, right? He came up here, and he was a star instantly. He's gone down. He was in the Senior Bowl. And so he's still NFL draft eligible. It's quite the story that a guy that's already played a year up here is going to get drafted in the NFL, and he's got future star written all over him too.
100% deserving. He
Okay.
was so good.
Argo's grade, thumbs up, down, or meh?
It's got to be down, and not because of their. I don't know if it's any part of their own doing, but your quarterback went from low salary to tops, like highest paid player in the CFL now is Chad Kelly. You have to let some guys go.
Right.
To me, it's a moderate thumbs down because, like you said, they've solidified the important spots to me on the offensive line, defensive line. Wynton McManus is back. You can fill in lower salaries at defensive back, and maybe you can pop. How many years have we seen an American receiver come up and absolutely blow the doors off for teams? Oh, Dalton Schoen is somewhere in the building here
right.
very soon, right? So things can be done, but it's just a moderate thumbs down, and I don't know that there was anything they could have done to get a thumbs up with the spot they were in.
Exactly. Okay, the last team in the East Division, the Montreal Alouettes, the defending Grey Cup champion Alouettes. That stings to say that still, but congrats to them. To me, the big picture for them is that just think of how things have changed for them in a year, because look at where they were last year heading into free agency. Everybody was bailing because their ownership situation hadn't been resolved yet. Pierre-Carl Pelledo took over a few weeks after free agency opened, I believe. But man, things have changed there. Jason Moss and Danny Machocha, they did a hell of a job there. And, I think of, they added Sean Lemon and Darnell Sankey during the year. They've re-signed some guys, but let's just talk about them. What do you see with what has happened to them so far this offseason?
Yeah, I don't know what they've really done. Like today we get the news Tevin Jones from Saskatchewan, who is surprisingly old, but is a big body like Austin. He's bigger than Austin Mack.
So, when you say old,
in his 30s.
Okay.
Like in his 30s.
Football
like,
years.
Football old for sure.
Okay.
Isaac Adiyemi Berglund the deal isn't done yet, but he's signed. He'd agreed to a deal to come from Calgary. Derek Wigan from Calgary as well. Sean Thomas Earlington, that one is done as the Montreal guy returns home from the years with the Hamilton Tiger Cats.
William Stanback goes to BC.
Yeah. which bringing in STE, you already have Jeshrin Antwi. You can now be Canadian at running back if you want. Walter Fletcher's a smaller back. Effective.
Yep.
Effective if you're going to throw blocks for him. So they'll make a change. I presume they're making a change at right tackle, and because for a few years that was University of Manitoba's Landon Rice. Late season it became Jamar McGloster, and Landon Rice is a free agent, so I presume it'll stay the same. They had a rough time kicking, and they had Marc-Antoine Dequoy turn into an absolute world beater last year.
Did he ever? Yep.
Oh man, he relative to his position, he might have been the best player in the Canadian Football League.
Right.
So they look like they're good in coverage. They've got their linebackers. They've had some losses on the defensive line. Armando Sewell is now a free agent. Their offense I look at these weapons on the offense and go, okay, I think Tyson Philpott, I think both the Philpotts are future stars, but Tyson's ahead of his brother Jalen just from injuries and experience so far. Love it.
Austin Mack and
Austin Mack.
Uguak to Tampa. So
Yeah.
there's two other guys from last year, right?
Yeah, I'm underwhelmed by their options in the receiving core.
I hear you.
Just as I look at it, Cody Fajardo was dynamite in that Grey Cup game, and I've been on Team Fajardo for some time. His regular season was 17 touchdowns and 14 picks, something in that vein. I don't know why I think they're going to be as good in the regular season as they were last year. Maybe because Hamilton looks like they're going to be bad, but you're not going to win 4 games against Ottawa this year if Ottawa's healthy.
Right.
So yeah,
Thumbs up, down, or meh?
for Tevin Jones, Isaac Adiyami Berglund, and Derek Wigan. It's a meh from me, dog.
Yeah.
They did so much. You mentioned Lemon and Sankey in the middle of last season. That was enormous.
Massive.
Because a year ago I'd have been here saying this is the worst roster in the Canadian Football League, and they won the Grey Cup. But much like Sask last year, what's the ownership situation? Who am I going to work for? Who knows? Now at least they're on some footing, and they've got stud players like Marc-Antoine Dequoy, Reggie Stubblefield, stud. KB Ento, curse you for what he did to the Bombers, but that cat can cover. Tyrese Beverett, playmaker. Sankey, Lemon, Wigan. They've got some playmakers. I'm just not overwhelmed by their offense, so I'm curious to see what happens between now and then. Austin Mack carried that offense in the early part of the last season.
Yeah.
So and Austin Mack's in the NFL now.
Let's move to the West Division and run through the Bombers' divisional rivals. Start with BC. Again, we've touched on this. They signed Dakota Prukop today from the Bombers to help their short yardage. Dane Evans retired to go coach high school football in Oklahoma, I believe.
Jake Hardy officially to the Lions today.
Jake Hardy, yeah.
As a special teamer, but
they lost the DB to Saskatchewan that we were talking about.
Jalen Edwards
Yes.
Cooper.
Lucky Whitehead's still out there. What jumps out to you from what the Lions have done or not done?
They've also lost Woody Barron, who is a force in that defensive interior. They released him. And Quincy Moje, who started some games, safety and dime, they released him as well. But it looks like you would presume they bring back Mike Jones.
Matthew Betts, we should remind everybody, has gone to the NFL with the Detroit Lions, so that's a big hole for them.
Well, and that one, I was thinking about that one today. That one hurts bad because David Menard is another Canadian defensive end. They're really good at getting to the quarterback. But now, so presume, and I don't know if it happens this way, but presume Menard comes up and now is a full-time starter. Well, now you don't have David Menard as a rotational defensive end. That,
right. At
the very least, that stings very bad. Not to mention, you're taking 18 sacks of Matthew Betts out of that ecosystem. And oh, by the way, Woody Barron's gone. So unless the Steven Richardson re-signing means that he can come back from 2 Achilles injuries, I love Stove, so I hope that's the case, but I have absolutely no idea if that's remotely possible.
Yeah.
There's going to be some growing pains on defense because they've lost some of their pass rush, and TJ Lee did his Achilles in the West Final here, which would generally mean middle October
Right.
is a return date for him at halfback. You still have Gary Peters, who is one of the best cover guys in the Canadian Football League. Marcus Sales back on a 2-year deal. Manny Ragamba, fine. Linebackers, fine. But there's some real losses on that defense. And then your best receiver is out till October as well, probably. As much as Keon Hatcher, says, I'm going to be back as fast as I can. History tells us Achilles are going to be middle October for Keon Hatcher to be back.
I like the stand-back edition. Montreal moved on from him. I like it. It's kind of he's still got game left. I'm sure he's hungry. It does have a short-term feel to it a little bit, though. It's not a guy that you're going to commit to for too long. But I like that pickup for them to, they've got to make the commitment to run if they want to. And I think it seemed like
They don't run the ball.
No, if they do, it's usually Vernon Adams, on a busted play or a quarterback draw that's making something happen. That's where they get their production from their run game.
Yeah, BC had the lowest early down run rate in the Canadian Football League.
Right.
So you go, okay, well, at least you got you're not paying top of market for a running back. If BC paid top of market for a running back, I'd be here scratching my head.
Right.
But it just kind of shows, it's super funny how quickly things are over, at least in our perception of running backs. 2021, William Stanback, top of the world.
Right.
Kadeem Carey, 2022, top of the world. Both their teams have said, meh,
Yeah.
feel free to go ahead and go somewhere else.
Kadeem Carey's still looking for a team right now as we speak. So,
Running back's a bad spot for.
do you have a grade on them then? What do you think?
Oh, it's got to be. Their moves in free agency were what the Bombers were.
Retain.
Let's retain our guys.
Yep.
Keon Hatcher through 2026. Alexander Hollins through 2025. Javon Katoy is a big weapon. Like literally big. Like he stands
Massive.
next to linemen and you go, I don't know which one is which, except that guy's all muscles. Through 2026. Tehema off the edge through 25. Marcus Sales through 25. It's getting back their own guys. Vernon's still under contract for them. But I'm just, to me, they're not a 12 win at this moment, and a lot of it's, some of it's going to be because of the injuries to a starter on defense and maybe your best player on offense. They're not going to be the team that they were to me in 2023. So, this is distinctly a meh.
Okay.
I'm between meh and thumbs up because Hladek's back,
So
Woods
that
is
would be-
back.
Okay.
Yeah, let's
All right.
say, Joaquin Phoenix and Glad Air is like, oh, the crowd. Okay, I got to go.
There you go. There
So
we go.
BC gets a moderate thumbs up. Dakota Prukop in short yardage will. How big was short yardage in the game against the Bombers that determined who was finished first,
Right.
right? So
Yep.
Dakota Prukop will help them in that respect.
Okay, well, let's move.
Calgary?
Yeah, let's go to Calgary.
Oh, Calgary.
They were 6-12 last year, still made the playoffs, but a bit of a surprise. They've been on a bit of a decline here. They add Demario Houston, which helps their secondary, and Demario burned them a few times when he was wearing Bomber colors. Matthew Schultz from Hamilton to put some pressure on Jake Mayer. They re-signed 21 players. This is earlier today when I was checking. It might have changed. Trevon Tate from Toronto, O-lineman.
They need tackles back.
Yeah, that's just me kind of getting you warmed up here, DT.
Micah
Not that you
Tights,
need any.
University of Calgary
what do
product
you-
who spent years with Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
He comes back to fill in depth behind Cam Judge. That's a nice piece. Calgary was brutalized by injuries in 2023. Another team they had their quarterback play all their games, but they lost Malik Henry early. Like it's just a legit deep threat. James Vaughters, we saw him in the early game here in Winnipeg. How good James Vaughters was coming back from the NFL. That guy went down with an injury early on.
Right.
You went, okay, I just don't know how you come back from that. Jalen Philpott missed a ton of time. It changed their draft strategy. But then receivers kept getting hurt, and Bagleton would miss some time. And how could we possibly keep our head above water? And the answer was, well, you couldn't. You're 6-12, and things didn't go real good. I'm fine with the Demario Houston. Demario Houston's such an interesting free agent character because he was a first-team CFL PA All-Star and a first-team CFL All-Star. But I don't know that fans watched his season last year and thought, I don't know if Bomber fans are super sad that someone else gave him a big contract and it wasn't Winnipeg giving him a big contract.
Yeah, it doesn't jump out as a shutdown corner necessarily the way that a Rod Hill, or I'm dating myself, Rod Hill, or Les Brown did back in the days, right when Winnipeg, James Jefferson, some of those great corners, but good player, ball hawk, and it's sort of what Calgary needed.
This just Demario Houston, when I think of his 7 interceptions, I don't think of a lot of cheapies, right? I don't think of the guy standing in left field and the fly ball just comes to him. He reads Bo Levi Mitchell in the Hamilton game, takes someone to the sidelines. Jake Mayer airmails one. Somehow Demario makes an unbelievable interception, the one here. A great read coming downhill, touchdown against Calgary. They seem
really
like they were
athletic plays too.
Yeah, they seem like and smart, like athletic
Yep.
and smart, and they seem like they were legit interceptions. But then I will never forget. I will just never forget the Banjo Bowl in Saskatchewan, and Jake Dolegala.
Labor Day. You mean the Labor Day or the Banjo Bowl?
Sorry, the Labor Day.
Okay.
The Banjo Bowl is the big game, so it's the one I default to.
Yeah.
Shout out Doug Brown, who says the Banjo Bowl should be the big game, and we're going with that forever. The Labor Day in Sask, whatever the first down play, sack or run for a loss, Sask is 2nd and 14 from their own 4-yard line. They're in a world of trouble. If they have to punt, Winnipeg's scoring points. And Demario earlier in the game had made a nice read coming downhill on Jake Dolegala. And Dolegala, I think, intentionally fired at the turf because he knew it would get picked off. And Demario went, I was this close. What looked to me like, I was this close to getting it from you. So 2nd and 14 from their own 4-yard line. Just make the tackle.
Yeah.
He jumps underneath a route, and I believe it was Emelis, goes 64 yards up the field, and you go, you're getting the, and it's got to be hard for defensive backs. You're getting the interceptions, but you've got to have that risk-reward meter dialed in
Pick your
perfectly.
spots.
Exactly. Something I think Dietrich Nichols is incredible. One of his many facets where he's awesome at. It just went. You can't do that.
Right.
You can't. And there was a game against Edmonton here, and Doug and I were in the booth, and they run kind of I feel like it was a hitch to the wide side, or it would have been the short side. And in my head, I'm like, ooh, watch out for the hitch and go on the pretty soon. And it was the next play. Zip. Ooh, if I old slow guy in the booth can see that, why isn't it happening down there? So I don't know if Bomber fans are crushed by that move and watching someone else give Demario good money.
Yep.
So, but Calgary needs turnovers, and if they think Demario can join Moxie, Dozier, Kobe Williams, and Trey Roberson and Titus Wall, that's a good-looking back six for them.
You mentioned all the injuries they had. So, they did what I think they've done what they had to do in free agency here to start. Who knows what, might happen in the next few days. Give us a grade for the Stamps.
The Calgary Stampeders, Trevon Tate, Matt Schultz, Micah Tights, Demario Houston. I go thumbs up. And I think injuries, they're back above 500 next year. I don't know who's going to be the quarterback for it, but you bring in Matthew Schultz, who I just think needs some more opportunities, but can legitimately give Jake Mayer a push.
He has to look over his shoulder a little bit now.
Yeah,
Yep.
And then you have Tommy Stevens, who can be, I think Tommy missed one and short conversion last year. You can get value from all 3 quarterbacks in a single game. Again, everything we say here is predicated on injuries evening out. If Malik Henry and Reggie Begelton and those Canadian receivers, Cole Tucker, Jalen Philpott, those guys are healthy for most of the season.
Yep.
That offense looks a lot better. They lose Kadeem Carey, but I think it's in the last 2 years, Kadeem Carey had never been their top yards per carry guy. It had been Dedrick Mills, and now they're officially, we're on to the next running back.
A nice change of pace back, too, for them.
They're replaceable. They've been replaceable. Believe they're replaceable at running back for some time.
Right, so you give them a thumbs up.
Thumbs up for Calgary.
Let's go up the highway to Edmonton. I guess the biggest news for them this offseason was the signing McLeod. Bethel Thompson comes back to the CFL after a year down south. That kind of clouds their quarterback picture a little bit because a lot of people wanted to see Trey Ford have a real shot at leading that team again. You mentioned this earlier, the trade. They traded Jake Ceresna, who I love as a player, to Toronto for Canadian receiver and Curly Gittins Jr. Added a couple of Toronto Argonauts specialists and Boris Beattie, the kicker, and the returner and Javon Leake. I'm just glossing over what they've done here.
Quarterback's been their biggest problem.
Yeah, they
right?
moved on from a lot of guys too. Ed Gainey, Taylor Cornelius, Aaron Grimes, Shannon Brooks, Stephen Dunbar Jr.
Yeah.
So they've made some changes there. But what's your take on what the Elks have done?
So I had to go back and look at one point, and I was like, when was the first time I felt I was out on Taylor Cornelius? And I went back into my Twitter at DTONOB, and it was October of 2021. I'm like, wow, that is a long time ago. And they doubled down on Taylor Cornelius to the point they're paying him money not to play this year, right?
Yeah,
it's
true.
They're dead money. So Cornelius will end up somewhere else. And to me, quarterback was just their problem of, yes, they did once they committed to Cornelius, to me, they did the best thing they could, which was try to commit to top-end receivers. Here's Stephen Dunbar you mentioned. Here's Geno Lewis. We got Dylan Mitchell is back. Here's Manny Arsenault. Here's Kyron Moore. Let's go. Let's get receivers for this guy. Kevin Brown at running back. Let's go. And it didn't. It didn't work. So they just move on from that. And McLeod Bethel-Thompson, we want Trey Ford. Trey Ford's exciting. McLeod Bethel-Thompson is a guy that legitimately could be the fourth best quarterback in the league this year. If third best, if things bounce right for him. So it's.
I guess
I think of floors and ceilings, right? He's not a guy with a super high ceiling, but he's got a guy with a raised floor. Trey Ford, ceiling might be to the moon if he figured out passing game, but the floor could be really far down there if he doesn't figure out the passing game.
As a fan of Canadians, I would love to see the Trey Ford thing turn into something. We all would, right? But when you're a team that's and a management regime there that's under the red hot light here, right?
It's trouble if they don't.
They had to kind of do something like this just to give themselves some safety net, because if Trey Ford isn't the guy, they've got a real big problem at the most important position on the field. So I get it, but I'm a little disappointed too, because it means that Trey Ford might start the season on the bench, which I don't think that helps his development at all. But keep going.
No,
Sorry, I didn't interrupt.
It absolutely doesn't. But I mean,
if you have to do it, you have to do it as to keep your job, right?
Yeah, because Zach Collaros and Chad Kelly, those guys are not moving from their teams, right? So Vernon Adams not moving from BC, so you have limited options to improve your quarterbacking spot. They're again loaded at receiver, and you get Curly Gittins, allows you to move the ratio a little bit. Gavin Cobb did some good things on specials in there as well last year. University of Manitoba, shout out. So you have Canadian options in the receiving core. A team that's going to struggle with their offensive line. As I look at 4/5 of it, I don't know. Mark Cordy, shout out, playing in the middle, the one guy I'm sure of. They move on from Serezna, but I don't think having to kick Serezna out to end didn't. I think in the way they want to run essentially 3 defensive linemen, Serezna is just, to me, just didn't really fit. So you trade that in for Curly Gittins. I like that just fine. And now Jamin Pelly and maybe Robert Kemdiche up from from time in the NFL can go to town. If they start re-signing some ends, if AC Leonard is back, okay. Now we're doing some stuff. Kai Gray, rookie of the year for them. Lucas Purifoy, Donovan Lum, okay. This back six questions, what they're going to do at weak side linebacker. I presume it's Michael Broderick, who they took very high in 2023. I love the McLeod Bethel-Thompson, but this is what else have they done in free agency? Boris Beattie, sure, had his best kicking season ever and was number 2 in the league to Sean White as points created. Monster on kickoffs, which were a massive problem for Edmonton last year, but that's of limited value. Javon Leake, 1st in punts, 11th in kickoffs, sure.
So
well, and this will be underrated, and please, 10 weeks into the season, let's look back at this. Kevin Brown, the running back, might be the best running back in the Canadian Football League. It was about 4.9 yards per carry before Trey Ford took over. It was 7.1 yards per carry after Trey Ford took over. The effect of changing the quarterback to your running game could be substantial in Edmonton.
But
if
now
you can't
Trey
count
Ford's
on that,
not going to be on the field.
well, right, and you can just imagine We have to take care of that guy too? Oh,
Right, right.
MBT ain't making those scrambles,
Right.
right? So it's going to be a thumbs down from me on the Edmonton Elks, unfortunately.
One
But
more-
they might have a better record than last year. Let me just say that because of the MBT move.
Okay. We got one more to go. The arch rivals, the Saskatchewan Roughriders. And I'll
Oof.
tell you what.
The winners of free agency.
Yeah, you got to give them credit and full credit to Corey Mace as the new head coach, because there's been an obvious push from his decision to go there, because the free agents are flocking to Regina. They've done a nice job. We talked about the Bomber guys that have moved on, and the big one, Jamarcus Hardrick, but AJ Willett, I like him as a back. Malik Carney from Hamilton, the D lineman. We mentioned Edwards Cooper, the DB. Corey Mace has done a nice job, and he hasn't even coached a game there yet in helping turn things around in Regina.
Yeah, in 2023 in free agency, there was just zero heat around the Riders, right? Uncertain. The GM was on a 1-year deal, had 1 year left. Craig Dickinson, the head coach, had 1 year left. What did they have? They were moving on from Fajardo, but okay, well, Trevor Harris is coming in, okay. But free agents, it didn't appear they wanted to go there, right? Like Jake Winicky and Darrell Walker, okay, but it just didn't feel like there was much heat in Sask. There's heat now, and whether that's long-term security or it's the Corey Mace factor or whatever it is, there's heat around Sask now because they are getting guys that they, in my mind, absolutely could not have gotten last free agency period. Jalen Edwards Cooper on the corner, Adam O'Clair to be the Canadian at will. They don't have to change the ratio there. Jameer Thurman in the middle. That guy, I love Jameer Thurman. Malik Carney at defensive end. They might need some more help there. Jamarcus Hardrick. I first went there in 2019, 2021, 2022, 2023. When, as Rider fans, when are we going to find some tackles? When are we going to find some tackles? Well, you got one.
Yeah.
You had to pay him, and you had to convince him to come from Winnipeg. But you got a tackle. So you add Jamarcus Hardrick to Logan Furland, Philip Blake back for 2024. When he stays healthy, it does a terrific job. You have options in the middle. It'll be Peter Godber, but you feel at least somewhat confident in Logan Bandy. If you figure out a left tackle, at least you have half it done. And then the impact in the run game, where there wasn't much room for Jamal Morrow and Frankie Hickson last year. Now there's potentially more room for AJ Ouellette, and you can get that. Last year was kind of lightning and lightning, Morrow and Hickson,
Right.
and they were pretty much replaceable to each other. Now it's Ouellette and Hickson. You go, well, if you can figure
Nice
out how to
combo.
roster
Yep.
2 American running backs again, okay, now you got a little change of pace. They are super interesting because as I look at this, we talk about the ratio and where can you start it. They legit can run 3 Canadian receivers, and I don't know when's the last time I saw that. And that will play. Like you can have Braden to the wide side of the field. Samuel MLS, who Bomber fans will remember, and 3 touchdowns. Kean Schaefer-Baker, stud, and he missed most of the season. But Braden Lenius is a real hybrid weapon. So they could run 3 Canadian receivers, 3 Canadian interior offensive linemen, and then the new Corey Mace as the defensive coordinator can go, okay, Jaden Dahlke at safety, and then here's a bunch of Americans that are going to come get you.
Yeah.
Yeah, if Trevor Harris is healthy, Saskatchewan's firmly on the rise because, well, frankly, they might have been the worst team in the league last year. But this, as it looks right now, if they find an X receiver, this could be a problem.
So you're giving them
They get a thumbs up for
massive
sure.
thumbs up.
They had to.
Yep.
They had to make a bunch of moves because it was bad last year. And injuries hampered them a little bit, absolutely. But they needed to make moves, and they made moves to give themselves a shot. And they're ones that are going to be popular fans. Corey Mace is already incredibly popular.
Right.
Like, Winnipeg's the heart of the Canadian Football League. Let's not kid ourselves. We know where we are. But Saskatchewan, there's just not been the same heat around them. Right. The heat's back.
Yeah.
With
which
Corey
is good
Mace.
for the league.
AJ Ouellette, you think that guy isn't going to have billboards and fans
It's
wearing
already
mullets
started.
at game? Yeah.
And the Thor's hammer and everything. Yeah, it's already started.
Yeah, and Jameer Thurman isn't flashy, but that guy makes plays in the middle. So they are distinctly on the Sean Bain Jr. redone through 2025.
Yep.
Saskatchewan, we're not making predictions yet, but Saskatchewan gets a thumbs up, and Labor Day Banjo Bowl may have a different feel this year with, this team isn't...
Yeah, bring it. Let's go.
Yeah,
It's gonna be
absolutely.
fun. Okay, take another break here for a sec as Josh has another jersey to give away, right, Josh?
Yeah, that's right. So I'm just gonna steal everyone, all of our lovely viewers, into the producer's booth here for a second, and we're gonna give away another jersey here. So next up, we have this Willie Jefferson jersey to give away to another viewer. We got 350 people hanging out with us. It's been about 90 minutes. You guys have been doing an awesome job. Thank you, everyone, for sticking along with us. And now we're gonna do a Willie Jefferson jersey giveaway. So if you're hanging out in chat and you want to win the Willie Jefferson jersey, just type Jefferson in the chat. We'll give you guys a minute here while we give Ed and Derek a bit of a break here to kind of relax for a second. And then we're going to pick another winner for another jersey here on YouTube. And again, if you weren't here earlier and you're going to win this Bomber jersey, you just have to be able to come and pick it up in the store here at the stadium at the ticketing counter in our newly designed store. So come check that out for sure, as well as new jerseys, new merch, all that good stuff. But yeah, it's been great. Ed, you guys have been doing a great job over there.
Okay.
We got a lot of Rod Hill support in the chat
Yes.
too. So you're not going above people's heads here, you know.
Okay, right on.
Just as an aside to the Bomber store, you can feel very safe buying that Brady Oliveira jersey now. Back for 2 more years.
There you go. Yeah, it's pretty cool up there what they've done. They've reconfigured it. There's a lot of cool things up there. Do we have a winner?
We got like type and type and type, and we got 350 people hanging out in chat still.
Yes. For 90 minutes. Bless you for being with us.
They're doing great. They're doing great.
I love it. I just love this. Like, my whole month has been, what about this and what about here and who's doing what with their ratio? Because there's just so many facets of the Canadian game that other sports don't have that you go, ooh, is Edmonton going to flip its ratio on offense, and what will that do to their defense, and who's this going to get, and how's this going to work? And just we could spend 5 minutes talking about the Elks' run game because they won't have Trey Ford going in there, or the Bombers, what they're going to do if Zach Collaros gets pulled from a game. Who's going to be the man off the bench for that?
All right, we got a winner in chat before I tee it up to you guys for the send off today. So it's going to be the winner. Congratulations, Casey Jones. Casey Jones is our winner of the Willie Jefferson jersey. So Casey, come on down to the Bomber store inside the stadium. Show them your YouTube profile. We have it on file here, so bring it to the ticketing counter there. And congratulations, you won a Willie Jefferson jersey. And before I sign off from the producer's booth, I just want to say again, thank you all so much for tuning in to episode 1 of The Huddle. They won't be regular in the off season. We have a bunch more shows planned, but once we hit training camp, they will be every Tuesday at 3 p.m. So make sure you have your notifications turned on for our YouTube channel so you know when we go live, and subscribe to the channel as well, because we're going to be sending out more content to our YouTube channel than ever before. So yeah, Casey Jones, congratulations. Thank you guys for being with us. And then I'm going to throw it back to Ed and Derek here to bring us home. But again, yeah, thanks for tuning into episode 1 of The Huddle. Going back over to you, Ed.
Appreciate you, Josh, getting all the details in there so I don't have to spit it out and trip all over myself. Thanks a lot, people, for joining us on the first ever episode of The Huddle, and appreciate you, DT. You're a rock star. You made this work. We went for 90 minutes. I didn't even know how long we went, but it flew by for me. Could talk CFL with you all day, brother. So appreciate you. Appreciate all you fans for tuning in to the first episode of The Huddle.
Did we thumbs up or thumbs down the Bombers in free agency, or is that
That's up to you, man.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, look, I got to go. I'm wearing the colors here, so I don't mind what they did because of all the heavy lifting they did, as I said earlier,
well,
in November, December, and January.
On CJOB, the sports show, when I make an appearance at 7:30 tonight, I will go with a thumbs up because I did not believe you could get Brady Oliveira and Dalton Schoen
Well said.
together. Well said. And if it's me, I believe offense wins championships, and the offense takes a hit not having Jamarcus Hardrick back. But Schoen and Oliveira, I kind of don't know how they did it. Yep. And as a guy who's going to be screaming Dalton Schoen on the corner route, I'm super excited. Collaros scrambling out to his right. Who is he throwing for? Oh, it's Dalton Schoen for the touchdown. I'm going to be so excited about that. Stanley Bryan is back. I'm the offense wins championship guys, and they solidified to the best running back in the game last year. And over 2 years, the best receiver in the Canadian Football League, maybe in Dalton Schoen. Love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
Perfect. Appreciate you.
Thank you,
Thanks
brother.
everybody for tuning in.